I'm going to start recording. Hi, I'm Renee Hobbs. It's Monday night, April 24th. It's the last day of class for the spring 2017 semester in EDC 534, Digital Authorship. I see Lourdes, I see Olivia, I see Mary, Vanessa, James, Marie, and Daniel. Okay, we are missing a few, but we are starting anyway. So it's kind of a bittersweet and sad night, but also a really joyful night. And I thought we could do somewhat joyful things, right? Somewhat joyful things. Of course, one thing you've already done, because you've written your reflective essays, is you've reflected back on the long, strange trip, right? Really only 12 or 13 weeks, and a kind of journey from thinking about the creative, your creative identity in terms of your growing up with media, your identity as a media maker and as a critical thinker of media. Our exploration turned to think about what media production activities look like in and out of schools. We actually tackled formally why creativity is developed by collaboration. And then we turned to that issue of representational ethics, figuring out who and how we decide how to represent people as we depict them in language and words and image and sound. And then again, some of an additional ethical issues around copyright and fair use. Then we turn to the messy part of the course, always at the end. I don't know if it was a good idea to put it at the end, you know? Who's that? Is that me or somebody else? Oh, it's somebody else. Sorry about that. All right, so the messy part of the course came toward the end, and we were talking about what happens in the classroom and how it can look chaotic at times, and how giving students freedom and creativity also means we still help them get structured, especially around things like thinking about their purpose and their audience as we tackle the issues of audience. At the end of the course, then we came to respect the messy engagement that happens when teachers are balancing the freedom of being a digital author with the responsibilities of being one too. So let's take a look at what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to hear a little bit about what progress you've been making on your Ignite. Let's start with that. What progress have you been making on your Ignite? And who's got a story to tell? You're learning something, right? What are you learning from planning and executing script writing and selecting images and doing all the elements of your screencast Ignite? What are you learning about your content? What are you learning about yourself? Who wants to go first? What are you learning from preparing an Ignite?
I'll go ahead and start. Pretty much it helps you to organize your thoughts, and honestly almost helps you create an outline of where you're headed in this, because you know you put it out there in words, you kind of have to stick to it, and it makes you realize that maybe your topic might be too broad, and and I'm going, oh Lord, I think I need to reel it in a little bit because it could get out of control. But it also it kind of gives you an idea of another way to present information too. I've not ever used this tool, and I probably would use this to summarize. You know, like we have students who create these senior project papers. I mean, how about using this as an idea as a presentation for senior projects? Give me 5 minutes. How many presentations could you get through in a day if you only gave them 5 minutes, as opposed to every kid, spending 45 minutes to present?
What a great point. And you know what's so interesting about that is that it actually takes a lot of work to get something down to 5 minutes. right?
Mm-hmm.
That
It
is
does.
coherent and strong, right? So I think you're right about, yes, it's actually easier to do a 45-minute presentation than it is to do a 5-minute one.
Yeah.
What an intriguing idea. Could we do that for high school senior projects? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Other way of thinking about the question, what are you learning by doing your Ignite? What are you learning from doing your Ignite? What are you doing in your Ignite? What have you done so far? What's hard? What's easy? Lourdes.
Well, I'm kind of still, I changed my mind a little bit about my project, but it's still kind of going in the same area. But for the Ignite, kind of like what Mary was saying, it really helps you make decisions. It helped me at least kind of pare down what I wanted to do. It helped me with my outline. I'm having to really think about what's doable while also explaining it at the same time. So it's been positive so far.
Okay, so that you've said another really interesting thing, which in some ways this process of doing an Ignite, it's because it is a creative process, it's going to be unpredictable. You are going to experience messy engagement. It will be chaotic, and actually all those things create stress, right? So that's part of the process that you're in too. So I'm glad to hear that you're moving through the process the way I imagined you would. Okay, so I thought maybe the two things that are on our agenda tonight are really to talk a little bit about your exploration of that crazy website, DIY.org, right? Which is kind of like hit record for children, right? Or hit record meets the Girl Scouts meets hit record. And then I also want to kind of talk about a really interesting short video I found called "This Will Revolutionize Education," which I thought would be fun to talk about at the end of the semester. So let's just refresh ourselves a little bit. You remember this crazy website? It showed all these patches. You could learn about crayon carving. You could learn new skills like programming and being a botanist and animation, cartography. Of course, because you're joining an online community, you're going to get peer feedback. And for mastery and feelings of mastery, you're going to get a patch for being able to demonstrate, in this case, your laser cutting skills. This community, it's kind of like an online creative community for kids. So let's go back to those questions and see if we can maybe we'll discuss as a whole group this time. There they are. You can tackle any one you want. Let's just read them out loud. Why? And maybe I could make them a little bigger, huh? Could I do that? Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can still see that? Yeah, good. Okay, so why is creative learning getting more attention now? Can creative learning really help promote school reform? Why or why not? How can creative learning demonstrate measurable impact for accountability purposes? What are the pros and cons of badges as an approach to measuring digital authorship? Do online creative communities have a place in formal education? Why or why not? And what are the similarities and differences between DIY and hit record? All those questions, we could spend a whole hour or more talking about any one of them. But let's just see who wants to go first. Vanessa.
So I want to talk a little bit about the badges because for those of you who don't know, there's a program called Media Smart Libraries in the state of Rhode Island that the University of Rhode Island is a big part of. And what they do is they use badges for the librarians who are attending workshops. So you can actually, you have to provide evidence of your participation in workshops and events and, you know, analysis and reflection and creation. And then you get a digital badge. And it's, the idea is that, you know, it's sort of validates you in your skills. So anyways, I thought it was interesting that this used badges as well for the kids. And I looked into the process of how you get the badge, and it does look like it's very, you don't just do it, you have to do the challenge and then get approved by someone, right?
Yeah, you have to do the challenge and get approved by someone. And Vanessa, did you have experience with the badges for Media Smart, and did you like it or not like it or what?
No, I haven't participated. I've gone to some of the workshops and I've looked at the program. But I think it's a great idea. I know I was talking to one school librarian, my children's school librarian, about it, and she was doing it, and I think she was a little confused by the badge program. But then definitely others are doing it, so, and participating in the workshops.
Nice, thanks for sharing. So here we're thinking about pros and cons of badges. Vanessa, I think, just did a really good job identifying the pros, right? The motivation, the validation, the sense of actually demonstrating a certain set of knowledge and skills. Are there any cons to badges, specifically in the context of formal education or in the context of digital authorship?
Yeah, I can go. I do think there could be some cons if it's, you know, if the students are, you know, whoever the novices are joining the community as beginners, depending on, I don't know who's evaluating, I don't know if it's subjective, but, you know, if they create something and then they don't earn a particular badge, you know, that could really kind of take away from their sort of intrinsic motivation to continue experimenting, I think. So while I like that it could be motivational for some, I guess it depends on how subjective the feedback is.
Great point. I can imagine being, you know, subjected to the withering feedback of a grad school crit class from an art, you know, an art teacher that could be devastating, right? Because some academic traditions have traditions of giving feedback that's really harsh and edgy, right? And designed to be challenging. Okay, great. So let's just hear two more comments to pick from among the list, or share an opinion about creative communities like DIY.org for younger learners.
I'll answer that question. My daughter is really interested in this whole, the idea of digital authorship. And so her being 12, I guinea pigged her and had her start an account on DIY and upload a couple of her pieces. And then I had a parent account. So I got to see, you know, what parents or educators could see too. And it was really interesting. But one of the comments that she made was sort of that peer pressure. What if people don't like it? What if I don't get a badge? She tends to be a creative, out of the box thinker anyway. And so I think that this has a place in formal education because it involves creative kids like mine, an outlet to show that, you know, maybe tests are not the end all. Maybe she can show you what she's learned with a drawing or with something else.
Interesting point there. Could a creative community with its meaningful feedback be an alternative to the outcomes-oriented assessment? A process-oriented assessment. Okay, so I guess you know why I'm intrigued about one topic that you could obviously see missing from the semester, which is assessing. And if you recognized it as a hole in the curriculum, yeah, it's a hole, and it's there for what I consider to be a really good reason. What we know about assessing digital authorship is like very limited. And, or maybe let me just say it more accurately. What I know about assessing digital authorship is very limited. That's the truth. And yes, I am discovering a really great literature from the writing and composition faculty, right, at the National Writing Project and in the composition literature more generally. And as I start to learn more about that, I might be able to incorporate it into the syllabus. But we haven't really talked that much. Just when we were talking about the audience, starting to think a little bit about, can we assess a student work based on whether the message they intended to send was the message you received? Right? Would that be good? And what other ways might we assess the process, the quality of the collaboration? Yeah, right. What else might we assess? And stay tuned, right? We'll figure it out. And your ideas and experiments about how to assess your own students' work will help us figure that out over time. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so creative communities are interesting, but do they have a place in formal education, and or what would be the obstacles to a teacher using something like Hit Record or something like DIY in the classroom? What are your thoughts about that? Is a regular public school or a Catholic school, Dan, going to be able to allow high school students to participate in a creative community like Hit Record or DIY?
Well, I wanted to integrate Flipgrid into my class, and it took a number of long conversations with the tech director and the assistant principal, and the assistant principal was very much in favor of it, but there was a number of questions that really had to be addressed about how to keep it safe, how to keep it locked down, and all those things that were, you know, necessary to make the community one that the parents would expect to have been a place where there would be, you know, pretty much most contingencies regarding safety were thought of ahead of time. So now, that being said, I got the approval, and actually because of taking the 2 courses, I haven't used it yet, but that's something that's going to get launched next year. Right. So.
Right. Wow, so that's a great observation, and thank you for sharing it, Dan. It's been my experience that when Flipgrid first comes into a school community, teachers really value and school leaders really value the moderation functions at the back end. And if you don't have a Flipgrid account, because you're just experiencing it as the student, right? But if you have a teacher Flipgrid account, you have a lot of control over how those Flipgrids are available, whether they require a password. In some cases, it can moderate so that a post won't show up until after you have approved it, right? Which is a great way to reward students for quality answers, right? And discourage goofing around, right? So there's definitely a lot of ways in which the back end supports that gradual release of responsibility, right? That's how the educators think of that concept. Okay, so oh, yeah, Mary, did I see your hand raised?
Yeah, just one comment about having it incorporated into formal education. I think with all of the STEAM and makers movements that are, you know, taking place throughout our schools, I think people are becoming a little more accustomed to allowing this divergent thinking and opening up to what creativity looks like. And I think this would be a kind of a good testing place for kids to you know, share that creativity that is produced in some of these makers movements. And if places don't have like a makers center of their own, why couldn't they open this kind of an opportunity up to kids? So.
Boy, that's a great observation. And the maker movement, Papert and the constructionists, they really paved the way. Their approach to learning is very much paved the way for thinking a lot about digital authorship. And in fact, it's kind of wonderful to know how all these ideas have an intellectual history. Edith Harrell is the co-author with Seymour Papert at MIT of a whole bunch of articles aligned with the idea that kids need to play to learn. And she was a student friend of mine when I was at Harvard Ed School. And so when we were in our 20s, we were talking all the time about kids as makers, right? Of various things, right? At the time, she was trying to get kids to make computer programs using Lego Logo. I was trying to get kids to make photographs, right? Using still and video cameras, but obviously those ideas have a long history, and recognizing the connection there is probably politically wise as well. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you a little bit because I wanted to do some synthesis. And how about if we start with my visual synthesis? All right, if you go to the website and you go down to the bottom of the page of the synchronous class agenda, you can open up the Renee's visual synthesis for yourself. And of course, you know, here it is, the paper version. But I'll see if you can recognize any of my little comic strip about the class, right? So give me a thumbs up if you can actually see my comic strip. Okay, good show. So why don't you just pick out a word or an image or a phrase and tell me what you think it's referring to. We'll go around the room. Everybody has to pick out something. Go ahead. Who starts?
I can go.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the couch with the words next to it say enter the parlor. And it brings me back to the beginning conversation and the continuing discussion about the they say, I say formatting.
Nice.
How you're continuing a conversation that's already been started.
Nice. 8 for the day, Dan. Bravo. Kicking us off right. Who's next?
I like how the heart or the center of it is the create to learn, because I did feel that was always at the center of everything that we did. So I like that it's a heart. It makes sense.
All right, you guys are reading my visual comic here. You see something in it that you remember or can relate to?
I'll go with the tweet with concision and the fact that we had to really stretch it sometimes to get our thoughts into those 140 characters. And
yeah, how about that? Take a
some of us cheated just a little bit.
Read about it.
Yeah, we cheated just a little bit to get our whole thoughts across, but I think it was fair.
Nice. Who's next?
The how to be creative flow. I think I will forever remember the TED Talk on that and the flow, that, you know, the perfect place of being challenged and being creative. And I just think that's amazing. And I've told so many people about that. And I've told my husband about that because he's not really happy with work stuff. And I'm like, this is what you have to aim for, that flow space. So that will stay with me, definitely.
You know, it's so true that is your goal, and that you're going to live a good life. If you can figure out how to do it more, life will be good. Who's next?
I'll go. Hello?
Go.
Oh, okay. I like how it's like the 4 leaps that we did are all kind of spread out, but each one is kind of has like a visual that kind of goes with each one of the leaps that we did. I
tried. I couldn't quite do it, but I'm glad you see the 4 leaps that are there. The media memoir, where you had to tell me about your experiences consuming and producing media. The explain a key idea video, where you had to take some ideas and summarize and synthesize. Then your collaborative, representing your dialogue. in some media form, and then your exploration of hit record and remix creativity. Okay, I'm hearing from a couple other people. Are there other parts of my comic you want to comment on?
Sure. Renee, on the bottom and at the top, the dialectic process there, both of those things, it's showing that life is a series of trade-offs, and that there has to be a balance. So they're both, one's kind of just straight horizontal, and I don't know if there was another effect to go ahead and put the other one up in a more angled way, but it's clear that those kind of dialectics are going to be around us at every corner, and we have to be thinking about balancing those. So.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for saying that so elegantly, Dan.
Thank you.
I have one. For me, I think copyright on the bottom is kind of, if I could draw an arrow directly to number 4, because I think in order to be able to remix and teach our students and our teachers, they are allowed, and what they're allowed to do and how they're allowed to do it, they need to have an understanding of fair use and copyright.
Boy, so right. And I love your point about if I could have put that C on the other side, closer to remix creativity, that would have been better. Next time I'll think about that, because you're right. Right now they seem far away, but conceptually they are tightly linked, and you nailed it. They are tightly linked. Great. Okay, who else wants to make a contribution about my comic? What do you see in there? What do you remember?
I want to say something. The first, this picture surprises me a lot. So the first thing come to my eyes is creative to learn. So that is the new book, right?
Right.
And then comes to the freedom and responsibility process. And then there's a reflection part. So a lot of, I was trying to look, and then the more I look, wow, I feel there is so much information in this chart. I'm surprised Renee is such a good drawer.
Yeah, thank you so much for noticing my reflection.
Yeah, reflection.
What that was, maybe like little sperms all coming together. I don't know. Yeah. Something like that.
I didn't want to say it, but that's all I could see when I was looking.
That's what they are. Generative. I meant to suggest the generativity, right? You guys don't have a dirty mind. You do not have a dirty mind. All right. Have I heard everyone offer their reflections on my chart? James, what do you see?
Now the symbolism of your comic just turned to procreation now.
Okay, say more about that.
So I remember Scott McCloud, and it kind of reminds me of that picture that you have next to the Medium memoir of comics as genre. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed how he brought forth your thinking as the comic was progressing along, and how that you could actually, even the stretching and how the orientation of the boxes, the spaces in between actually have an interplay on how you're even consuming information. And I thought that was very interesting because of how that can also apply during your actual media making and other genres. And
wow. So James, you have just said something really, really interesting. And I guess this is almost like a research question of the class. You said, there's something about visually representing things in the form of like comics that helps you think abstractly, that gives you distance from the here and now-ness, right? Because visual communication is whole, it's not linear, right? It's whole. And you have to simplify. Remember how he talked about we could make a human being just with, 2 eyes and a mouth, that we have the capacity to understand.
I never would have thought that, how they brought it forth, but it made sense because of too much detail takes away from the message. And
right. And even still, there's probably too much detail here, but it was 14 weeks, you guys, So now I want to give you a little bit of a comparison. So I'm going to share my screen with you one last time. So one thing I tried to do in this semester, besides represent my thinking about this course visually, is I tried also to, oh no, now I don't know what can you see. Can you see where it says synchronous class agenda? Thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, good show. I tried to do a synthesis in words, and I want you to notice how like totally different it is. Okay, so I'm quite curious about why this is, but this is a set of slides that I made last time I taught this class. In general, this is the same. It's the same class, the same ideas. There's a couple different slides, but here's what I tried to do. I tried to create 12 sentences. So I forced concision on myself, right? Instead of just blah, blah, blahing, I said, I'm going to try to get it down to 12 sentences, and that was my structure. Can I explain the whole course in 12 sentences? Well, I tried. So maybe I'll have somebody read aloud number 1.
Human creativity is an essential part of the cognitive, social, emotional, physical, and moral development of human beings across the entire lifespan. It involves going beyond the information given. Nice.
Who's reading number 2?
Creativity is an inquiry process that requires sensitivity to content, medium, form, and audience.
Who's going to read number 3?
Critical analysis and creative production exist in a dialectic relationship of mutual dependence.
Who's going to read 4?
Human creativity involves remix and synthesis as people use, rework, and manipulate others' creative expression as part of their own creative work.
Number 5.
Copyright and fair use offer strong protections to authors and users of creative content.
And number 6.
When people use digital media as creators and consumers, they become implicated in an ethical relationship that includes both the subjects depicted and the audiences who interpret the work.
Number 7.
The practice of digital authorship as literacy pedagogy has a long history that includes approaches developed by youth media practitioners, English educators, and technology integration specialists.
And number 8.
Through collaboration, learning about personal and social identity is magnified.
I think this is where my my numbers got off track here. I think that's number 10. The dialectic between process and product affect how and whether youth media works are comprehensible to their audience. Number 11, the creative collaboration process involves a complex set of power relationships among learners. And number 12, creative authorship activities are inevitably inflected by the ideology and worldview of the educators and mentors who support this work. Okay, so it's a completely different summary, right? Because words let me think in one way and pictures let me think in another way. And thank God I can use both sides of my brain to synthesize, right? I mean, that's the main idea here. Now, let's just say that we're kind of steaming toward the end of the class, and I want you to watch this short video. Like we usually watch videos, we go kind of into our private viewing space. The video you're going to watch is by a guy named Derek Muller. He's a YouTuber whose website is called Veritasium. He usually does science videos, but this time he tackled the question of video in education. So we're going to watch that video for, I think it's about, let me just take a look at how long it is. How long is this video? This video is...
You need a website. Why not do it yourself? With Wix, you can create your own professional website. Choose from hundreds.
After you watch the ad, the video is 7 minutes long, so it's going to take us a little bit of time. I will return in 8 minutes, all right? So mute your microphone, and we'll see you in 8 minutes. All right, give me a thumbs up if you finished that video. Okay, so what'd you think? What ideas were worth remembering? What points did he make you agreed with or disagreed with? And how does his argument relate to what we've been doing all semester?
I thought it was interesting that, especially when he brought forth animation, because I've realized probably in the last 2 to 3 years, animation's been absolutely huge, and how it's been integrated into an array of courses and other apps that I'm, for my own education, and it's been really helpful, especially for me in anatomy and physiology, when you're learning all these large words and processes that are going on, and then you have this animation in which they show the heart in that aspect and how it actually goes in, shows all the components actually working in slow time, real time, as opposed to looking at a static text and trying to trace all the paths and make sense of everything that's going on. And it's very difficult when you're new to that kind of knowledge. But when he said that there was no difference, I guess, in the research as far as what's being mediated for information, I thought that was really interesting, and I'm just not quite sure how to make sense of that.
Isn't it fascinating? It's a really great observation about your point about now wait a second, hold on. I know what it is. Animation, and this idea that there might be something about the very uniquely educationally powerful about the genre of animation. I think his main idea was it's really about how much effort we put in, right? And I love that point because back in the very beginning of my academic career, I had exposure to a colleague from Israel. His name was Gabriel Solomon. He was at Hebrew University, but he came to be a visiting scholar for 1 year at the University of Michigan when I was an undergraduate. And he had just written a book you weren't even born then. It was in 1980, and the book was called The Interaction of Media, Cognition, and Learning. And he did studies with kids in Israel, and he found out, guess what? Kids in Israel learned a lot more from TV than American kids when shown the same shows. How could that be? Well, in the United States by 1980, kids were used to a very robust set of TV networks and channels and shows. Kids watched TV with a kind of passive attitude. But in Israel in 1980, there was like one channel and it was only broadcast 4 hours a day, right? And there was a very limited amount of educational media, so that when kids grew up in Israel, they were trained to like pay strong attention to the TV and learn everything you can. And so the kids' learning outpaced the American kids' learning simply because the Israeli kids put more effort in to learning from video. And that's his point, is that anything that gets kids to put effort into learning is going to result in learning. So that makes us think about what aspects of the create to learn pedagogy might encourage kids to invest the effort in learning. And of course, I would submit to you that making media, the funnest thing ever, is a good way to invest effort in learning. So that's another point. Donna, I saw your hand raised.
To add to James Anthony's point, what we found at the school where I'm the technology coach is that the first year we integrated Chromebooks, all of the teachers went to, all of the notes are on Chromebooks and everything is there for you. But they found that their test scores actually went down because there was no effort, right? They just filled in the blanks and mindlessly went on. But I agreed with the video because he said that, it's not the teacher and it's not the computer that's going to revolutionize education. It's evolution. And so we have evolved from putting everything onto the computer. And sometimes the right tool for the job is a piece of paper and students taking notes. And so it has to be that balance between what they do by hand and what they do on the computer screen.
Wow, such a key point, and something we're really appreciative of now that we have kind of teased out some of the strengths and limitations of the algorithms, personalized learning, and the complexity of that. And that's for like yet another course, and especially for those of you who are coming back for the Tier 2 Leadership Institute. That's something we're going to tackle with the help of some teachers from the West Warwick Public Schools who are going to be telling us about their journey with digital authorship. Okay, so the final thing I thought we should do, because it's getting close to the end here, is one of the things we did learn is we all learned from each other this semester. Right? And so at this point, it's probably a nice thing for us to acknowledge how we learned from each other. So if you had an experience of learning from somebody on the call tonight, there's 13 of us here, so we're almost the whole class. Who did you learn from, and what did you learn? Dan, I'm going to start first by saying, Dan, I learned so much about Catholic theology from you. And wow, that was a plus for me, because you're integrating these fields is very novel and very exciting. And it reminded me of my dearest friend, Sister Elizabeth Toman, a Catholic nun, director of the Center for Media Literacy, who just died this past fall, along with a lot of other people in my life. And that connection to faith practice was particularly meaningful to me in the context of my life this semester. So what a pleasure to have you in class, and thank you for letting me learn from you. Vanessa.
So I think it was both Mary and Kristen who on Twitter, the way they would be concise, and then also the use of images and text and images, that really sort of opened me up to new ways of communicating with Twitter. So I appreciate that.
I'm seconding your kudos. Absolutely. We had some thought leaders on the Twitter sphere, and I enjoy, and I still hope we can keep it up, ladies. Let's keep sharing with each other, all right? We're part of our personal learning network for life now, right? So thanks for making that appreciation. Anybody else want to share? Did you learn from somebody? You want to give a shout out? If you want to give a shout out, this is your time. Otherwise, we're turning off the computer and I'll never see you again. I mean, you'll never see each other again. Dan. Oh, your microphone's not working, Dan.
I've ended up in the breakout rooms with Olivia and Donna, I think, more than on one occasion. And I've just found that they've been very, very clear thinkers, helped me to organize my thoughts when I'm hearing what they've done on digesting the weekly material. And I wanted to thank both of them for that.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else want to do some shout out, share, offer an appreciation? Mary.
I'll go ahead. I was in kind of the same idea as Dan. I believe I entered the room quite a bit with Hanyen and Marie. And, you know, I think what it brought to my idea was that, you know, Marie came in here with not being very confident in her skills. And has proven completely otherwise, that she has a lot to be confident about. And kind of the same with Han Yang. I think her language, she didn't feel confident in being able to contribute because of that, but that certainly didn't show to be a barrier whatsoever. And you know, I appreciate that, but I think truly I kind of gained more of an idea of, you know, we're all coming from so many different places, and none of us really knows what's in the background of what everybody brings to this space. And in considering that, we kind of have to look at each other and treat each other kind of gently and understandingly in considering all of that. So,
such a beautiful observation. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to say who you learned from? Marie.
I kind of learned from everyone. I mean, Mary kind of took me under her wing. Whenever I had a question, I would ask her. I learned a lot from, looking at what Vanessa would post. And I'm like, I think I'm going to try that. That looks easy enough. And it never was easy enough. But I got bits and pieces from everyone.
Nice. Well, that's how I feel. So that's probably a good way to end, because I got the pleasure of reading your work all semester and seeing how you were tying things together and what sense you were making. And even more exciting, I got to hear how you were applying these ideas in your own workplace setting, which was mind-blowing. And we should have had a whole class just on that, right? So anyway, we come to an end of the semester. It's been a real. And I'm just going to put my screen share on one more time just to remind you. So I think you probably, give me a thumbs up if you actually have gotten from the registrar or whoever the IDEA evaluations, the student evaluations. Have you gotten those? Yeah, they'll be coming to your URI Gmail. So check that, you complete that. The Screencast Ignite, I'll hope to see those by Thursday. Remember, you're posting those to your blog and tweeting a link to let me know they're there. And then your final project is due May 5th. I'm pretty much around by phone anytime. Most of you guys have had pretty good success calling me up on the phone and just chatting. So feel free to keep doing that as you steam toward the finish line. The final project is worth 300 or 400 points, so it's a major part of the grade, and it's a chance really for you to do work that earns you that MA, right? The deep expertise that comes with the master's degree is embodied in every graduate course. That's why we expect students to work so hard, because graduate school is supposed to be hard. So have fun with that and learn as much as you can. Okay, so gosh, what hand signal do we do for the end of the semester? Oh man, I think the true embodiment of the class would be for us each to make up our own hand signal to say goodbye. And that could be the Princess Wave, the Queen Elizabeth Wave. That could be the Pulp Fiction coma. That could be anything, but we'll go around the room non-verbally and offer our goodbyes. Okay, go ahead, do it. Oh my God, you guys are too adorable. That is great. All right, see you next time. Bye-bye. Happy end of the semester.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.